It is that time of year, speedworm season, or should I say thumper season. Here we have the all-new Thumper Jr. from CPF Lures and the original Thumper. Very versatile bait. One of the biggest downfalls of a speedworm for most manufacturers is that these tails cast off. Not from fish, just from simple casting. I promise you, whether you have our floating thumper that will float a 5/0 hook, the original Thumper made out of a standard plastic, or the all-new Thumper Jr, these tails won't cast off. Rare back, throw them as hard as you want, they won't cast off. Very versatile bait. In this video, I'm going to show you a few different rigging techniques and how I like to use them. Let's start off talking about our floating Thumper. This is the original Thumper size. It's 7.5 inches long. You can see that tail right there. This was designed from the beginning by me and my partner to be a speed worm. It didn't start out as a paddle tail with a modified mold that became a speed worm. This was designed to be a speed worm. Little punch out right there keeps and the little extra plastic back here keeps that tail from ripping off. This will float a 5/0 hook. The nature of this plastic is pretty tough. I like to use a 5/0 wide gap hook there, but a thinner wire hook. This is still strong enough if you're throwing 45 or 50 pound braid that it's not going to bend or break, but I like to use a 5/0 hook. There's people that will tell you you need to rig it with the tail down. With our tail here, you can rig it with tail up or tail down. When I'm throwing top water, when I'm reeling this on top water, I like to throw it with the tail down. So I'll start with the tail facing on the same side, the pointy part on the same side as the hook. Run it down, probably a 1/2 inch. Pretty tough plastic here. This bait will last you all day long. Run it all the way up over the eye of the hook there. See where that hook crosses the worm horizontally right there? That's where you want to run the hook horizontally. Show you this way. Back past through the bait. Not up this way. Run it horizontally. Show you here. Run that. Let me measure it out there. I run that horizontally, so it's all the way through. See, like that? Now your hook already has a good path. I'll pull it back and just bury it in the skin like that. Nice and straight. See, that's down, so this will float high and dry. You can work it like a weedless whopper plopper back in the grass. With this technique here, I will get back in Kissimmee grass or emergent or slightly submerged hydrilla, lily pads, chunk it on our 45 pound test, or 30 pound test, 30 or 45 pound test, 9X, no fade braid, it's black. That's plenty of line strength there. And you can just reel it over the top of the water. If you need to stop it in a hole, or if you see a fish chasing it, it will just sit there and float high and dry. You can chug it, pop it, whatever you want to do, it'll float that hook. That's how I rig my floating Thumper. Mainly I try and put it down, tail down this way. It will work just fine if you have the tail up. Still get about the same action. This is a little bit more action here this way. I like to throw it out, reel it in, burn it across the surface. Sometimes I'll chug it, depends on what the fish want. This can also be used weighted for slow rolling, the floating Thumper. It's going to last you longer than the regular Thumper. If it's real windy out, but I don't want the bait to sink a lot, I'll sometimes rig it. Here we have our standard Thumper, not jumping ahead. This one's rigged with an 1/8 ounce. If I was going to slow roll this floating Thumper in high winds, you could rig it with a 3/16 or a 1/4 ounce. It won't sink too fast because of the flotation of the bait. So the floating Thumper has more than one option of just burning it over the surface. If you like to Texas rig a big speed worm, I know a lot of people like to do that around brush piles. This thing will sit straight up and down like this. Straight up and down because it floats. The standard Thumper, as you can see here, I have it rigged with 30 pound braid, bobber stopper, 1/8 ounce burnt tungsten weight. Sometimes I will use a 3/16 ounce weight if I'm fishing deeper water. Same 5/0 hook, rigged just the same. Typically, when I am slow rolling this bait under the water, I like to rig it with the tail up. Personal preference. I'm sure it would work fine with the tail down. Don't let anybody tell you it has to be one way or the other. That's your personal preference. And I will slow roll this bait all over the Kissimmee chain, Okeechobee, anywhere you have submergent vegetation. Slow roll it just like a spinnerbait and they will crush it. Everybody's loved that 7.5-inch Thumper since we introduced it a couple of years ago. We had a ton of requests to make one smaller. So this year, just recently, a couple of months ago, we introduced the Thumper Jr. Bobber stopper, 1/8 ounce weight. This is not really big enough to make a big presentation burning it over the surface. I've caught a few fish doing that, but typically they like the standard 7.5-inch Thumper. This is made for slow rolling. Same tail, just downsized. Tail won't cast off. This is a red bug color here. 1/8 ounce weight. I went down to a 4/0 hook, and there you have it. Thumper from CPF Lures. 9X no fade braid and burnt tungsten, 1/8 ounce and 3/16 ounce weights.